Okay, so we will start over. Apologies, everybody. This is my first time. I didn't know that you had to click go live. I thought that once everything was set up and then 8:30 came around, it would just start going. So I do apologize for that. Let's start over. Oh gosh, that was a lot. Okay, so thank you, Reg. I appreciate that. Okay, let's start over. Apologies for that. All right. So the CPI reaction was out. There was an initial bearish reaction. However, now the buyers are stepping back in. So the early action for the day is going to be all about whether or not the regular trading hours low holds. The reason why the regular trading hours low is going to be key is because we know we're looking for a potential daily higher low over 4483.25. So anything over that's going to be good for a daily higher low. And if you'll notice, this value area high over here, it's the value area high of this structure here, right? This is the demand zone. This is a supply zone. So this is an area where we balanced for a while. The market said it was fair price. Then we broke out. Because we broke out above this area, then that must mean, because there were buyers here, the net effect was buyers. That must mean that this was a demand zone, right? And then because you had balance here and then a breakdown, this must be a supply zone. So all of this price action so far has been dictated by buyers from here and sellers from here. That's why these highs here and this high here is pretty much right off the lows of this. And you can see that when the sellers were able to trade through this structure, where did they start having problems? The value area low. And now recently, ever since we've come back to test the value area high of this structure, each time we come in, there's demand. We come in, there's demand. We come in, there's demand. Such that there has been very little acceptance under this key level, 4506.25, up until now. Will that persist? We have no idea. So in order for us to keep a close eye on what's happening and to monitor the situation, then what we're going to do is we're going to look at the regular trading hours low. Again, yesterday's regular trading hours low is pretty much the exact same structure, same level as this value area high. So if the buyers can hold over the regular trading hours low, that affirms this value area high as support. That being said, even if the buyers can find acceptance over the regular trading hours low, which is what they need to do in order to set this daily higher low here, they still will need to overcome the overnight high, because that's as far as the overnight buyers could take it. And if you'll notice, the overnight session has very little volume relative to the regular trading hours. Here's the regular trading hours, here's the overnight session, right? And so if these overnight buyers could take it this far, and then the cash market opens and all the volume comes in and they cannot overcome the overnight high, that must mean that the real volume does not support the overnight buyers, right? Which should have been relatively weaker. Okay, so if we take off the regular trading hours, then we'll see that yesterday's point of control is all the way up here at 4528.75, but you also do have this area right here, which is a very prominent point of control as well. It's not the point of control of the day, but you have a bit of a double distribution when it comes to the volume. Technically a triple distribution. You have these three volume mounds here, right? And so you can see why the sellers were having problems here during the overnight session, because that's where this bulk of volume is. Such that if we were to clear this overnight high over 4518.50, then eyes on 4522.75, then 4528.75, and these buyers will create no change without getting back over the regular trading hours high 4539. So they have a good amount of work to do to get that done. Now we can look at our sectors as a good guide to see whether or not these buyers are positioned well. So if we look into the sectors here, this is the healthcare sector, XLV. Here is the finance sector, XLF. And then here is QQQ. Usually I have it on QQQ. And so the idea then is to look at the prior sessions, look at their value area, which is where 70% of the volume is traded around the point of control, and the point of control is where the most volume is traded. So the idea then is that the point of control is pretty much a line in the sand. If these sellers want to remain in control, they need to hold the point of control as resistance and break under yesterday's value area low, break under yesterday's regular trading hours low, and that is the same for everybody. So even though this reaction right now has been negated the bearishness, so meaning that we have initially we saw this breakdown, but then no follow through. That being said, as long as these sectors points of controls, so that's let's see, that's roughly 132.93 for XLV, that is 372.84 ish for QQQ, and right now XLF is actually over it, 3472. But if these point of controls, especially because XLV and QQQ are the two largest holdings, such that if you see strength on the morning and then you reject from here and reject from here, well then these ES buyers are not going to get very far, because together QQQ and XLV are like 40% of the S&P 500 of the ES. And so with the XLF is the only major sector that's positioned above yesterday's point of control, but it is still way under the value area low. I mean the value area high, excuse me, this level here, right? So the buyers are not positioned so well to go on the offensive, but at the same time, they are positioned well to be on the defensive as long as this regular trading hours low is holding as support. As long as you're holding the regular trading hours low as support, then the odds of balance are, that's it. That's what we should expect. If the regular trading hours low is holding, we should expect sideways to higher. Okay, the bias must be sideways to higher as long as the regular trading hours low is support. Okay. And now let's move on to the NQ. So for the NQ then, is very similar, where you have this supply zone and then this demand zone, although technically they traded through this demand zone all the way down to this guy. So technically it's this guy is the key demand zone, this guy is the key supply zone. Now, that being said, this middle guy is kind of, I don't know, I guess you could call him, I don't know, the mama bear, the middle one, right? And so it's been a pretty good guide as well, because here you can see after we've held this lower structure, where do they stall? They stall right at the value area low. They stall again under the point of control. They stall again at the value area high. And it's only after holding the point of control again for a higher low, the point of control of this structure for a higher low, and then clearing the point of control of this middle structure, and then clearing the value area high, that these buyers are now more confident that this structure, this middle structure, is starting to hold as support here. And we got early indication that there is demand here because on this initial move down, after breaking down under the value area high, you should expect a test of the point of control at 15327, which is not what happened. We set a daily, but we did just set a lower high, and now we're looking for a potential higher low over 15352.50. And I was highlighting this yesterday for our, for our futures game, that this little hourly structure becomes key now, because this is pretty much sitting on top of this. Oops. That little hourly structure is pretty much sitting on top of this guy. And so the idea then, on top of this point of control, and so then the idea is, if this hourly structure continues to support price, then they're not going to get down to that point of control. It's at like 237 or something like that. Okay, so it's a very similar scenario for the NQ, although the NQ, you can see it has some relative weak. Let me move this back over because I need this over here. You can see that there's relative weakness on the NQ, and the reason why I say that is because you'll notice that as of right now, we're still under the regular trading hours low, whereas the ES is trading right around it, but did try to get above it. So right now the NQ is showing some relative weakness here, still a little bit under the regular trading hours low. So the early action then, what we'll be looking out for is, how does price respond to the regular trading hours low? Because again, just like the ES, if we open up right here, then that'll be the sellers trying for a gap down. The early action then will be all about whether or not they can fill the gap. If you cannot fill the gap, if you open up here and you cannot fill the gap, and then you roll back down under the open, they should be trying to get to the overnight low. If they can crack the overnight low, then eyes on these next targets, 15382.50, and then 15327. That should be the goal for these sellers on new lows. Okay, now that being said, if you don't see follow through over the overnight low and these buyers can get back over the regular trading hours low, then again, the bias becomes sideways to higher, right? Because as long as this overnight low is not seeing follow through, as long as the regular trading hours low is not seeing follow through, where can we go? If we're not going to move lower, we can only move sideways or higher. If we do move sideways or higher, then we're going to use the same exact key levels to assess how well these buyers are doing. So if they can hold the regular trading hours low, they can break over the overnight high, then the next key level becomes the point of control 15558.25, and then beyond that, eyes on 15631, the value area high, and then buyers create no change without getting over the regular trading hours high. So let me show you what I do every morning then to trade the NQ. Very similar to the ES, but it's a little bit more complex. The way that I like to do it is I like to position for the ES first. Now, this is not the clearest open, right? Because again, these sectors are a bit of a mixed bag. Let me just bring this back. These sectors are a bit of a mixed bag, right? With two sectors under the point of control from the prior session, and then one trading right at it. Again, this is a reasonable spot for buyers to try to defend, but there's no real good way of knowing that until we get a little bit more price action on the morning. For example, if we were to see a break of the overnight low with no follow through, and then we look over at these sectors and they're holding up okay, maybe even getting over the points of control, okay, then that would be a day where we're starting to get interested in a potential buy. Okay, so if you were looking for a sell, the situation that you would have liked to see on the ES for the sectors is everybody under the value area low at least. Everybody under the value area low, or the POC at least. Not sure why this is not loading. I'm sure it'll load eventually. Whatever. Okay, so what I like to do for the NQ then is I look at all of the sectors for the NQ. Excuse me. Okay, So here are all the top holdings for the NQ. It's usually it's in a vertical monitor, so the order is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, with Netflix being the smallest holding and Apple, of course, being the largest holding. So you look at NQ then and you think, okay, well, if I want to play NQ, then it's showing the relative weakness, so it would probably be for a sell. So you look at the top 4 holdings first, right? And you see Apple in the middle of the pack, right? It's in the middle of yesterday's range, so it's not giving you a lot of good information there. Microsoft is under yesterday's low, trying for a gap down, so that's a plus for sellers. NVDA is opening up low near yesterday's low, so that's a plus for sellers and under the value area low. And Amazon is also trying for a gap down and way under the value area low. Meta also under the POC and near yesterday's low. Google gap down, and Tesla at yesterday's lows. And then Netflix also near yesterday's low. So actually NQ is positioned, the sellers are positioned well. I'm not making a prediction. It does not mean you can know that the sellers are going to step in, but you cannot get to where you're trying to go unless you know where you are starting from. So right now you have to call it for what it is, right? You have to say, as of right now, these sellers are positioned well in NQ because most names are showing weakness under yesterday's value area low, correct? Most names, only Tesla and Apple not doing so. Right? So then the idea is, okay, well, we should be prepared for the potential of a sell, such that if you keep this screen to the side and you're monitoring it the whole time or whatever, let me just reproduce this back on my other side here so I can stay on top of it. If you were to see this, right, and everybody continues to stay weak, okay, then we can be more confident that these buyers are going to have a hard time in NQ and we can be more open to the sell. Right, even if we were to see strength on the open here, like if you see initial buying, right, but then everybody starts having problems where at the point of control, at the value area high, at the point of control, at the value area low, whatever. If you start seeing problems at the POCs and the value area lows for the majority of these names, and let's say we're hanging out over here where NQ is also testing the point of control, all right, the odds are pretty good that you can look for a sell here, and then you can just hide your stop like over here, right, over this guy, for example. Oops. And if you're, if you're in our chat room, you probably have, if you're, especially in the futures room, then you already understand these concepts. You see me use them all the time. They are very helpful. They're very, very helpful because essentially where value is moving is that is really key. Lori would likes to say, well, oops, there's the title all wrong. I used the old settings. Apologies. Change that now. First day. Okay, so yeah, so the idea is, right, that value is price over volume, right? Price, Lori always says price is king, queen, and I think more. That's fine. If you agree with that, I agree with you as well. But if price is king and queen, then volume is the populace. Volume is showing you how much do people agree with the king and queen. You see what I'm saying? Because if the king and queen are saying higher prices, higher prices, higher prices, but there's no volume joining it, right? Because if you listen to Dan, then you know that Dan would refer to volume as the quote unquote prove it indicator, right? So if price is moving without volume, that means value is not following price, which means then that you should be suspicious of this price movement, right? If ever you're charging forward and you have few people supporting you, you should be wary, right? Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's the idea. So I personally think it's reasonable to be looking for sells as long as these sectors are showing an inability to get over their key levels from yesterday, primarily the points of controls. Okay, and that's pretty much exactly where the ES failed yesterday, by the way. Right, even after this initial buying. So unfortunately for me, I had a sell in here. I took some profits and then I stopped out over the open, and then I didn't sleep. I completely slept on this. But had I been paying closer attention, it failed exactly where you would think these buyers would have problems yesterday's point of control. Okay, so let me just run through these sectors really quickly now, and I do apologize for not being here for the full time due to the snafu in the beginning, but the ETF levels right now, the key low of yesterday is 445.39, and the point of control is going to be Come on. Come on. Point of control is at 446.90. If these buyers can't clear 446.90 on the ETF chart, then they do absolutely no proving, which is, again, pretty much exactly what happened yesterday. Right? All of this buying couldn't clear the point of control, and so value still moved lower. QQQ. QQQ also looking for potential daily high or low. Anything over 369.15 will be good for one. Flirting with this gap down open here. If we do move down lower and see follow through under yesterday's lows. Then eyes on 369.81, although there's a lot of volume traded here first, 372.09. Hourly time frame, just short-term guy, we're going to be looking for an hourly lower high under 375.64 upon any bounce here. Moving on to IWM. So IWM is still a potential daily bear flag. Sellers were positioned very well yesterday to control the day. That you saw an initial buying on the morning, but again, inability to overcome the value area high, inability to overcome this key resistance 185.72, and then sellers step back in, and it's pretty much just been balancing. Whenever you see value largely overlapping for multiple sessions, that's just balance. That just means that we have two-sided action back and forth, and neither side is really getting very far, such that when you see a break of the developing value area low or high, you just revisit this zone. So we have to stay open-minded for IWM, RQY to continue to see more daily balance as long as this is the case. So eyes on the value area high test, 184.84. This is notable relative strength for IWM. Everybody else is opening pretty much near yesterday's low. Not everybody, but the SPY and QQQ are opening up very close to yesterday's low, whereas IWM is seeing some relative strength. Hourly time frame, we're going to be looking for a lower high under 185.34. And again, this is potentially a daily bear flag. So if you see a break of 185.72 that lacks follow through and we roll back down into this, that would affirm this potential daily bear flag. And if we do confirm this daily bear flag today, then they should be trying to come here next. This big volume area, 181.90. Okay. Bitcoins. All right, so for Bitcoin, I honestly think it would be fine to just be patient on Bitcoin, but if you are looking to take a trade, just be very mindful of this, right? If you are a buyer, this is the key structure that's going to keep your perspective in check, okay? Any buying down here, right? Any of this buying that doesn't flip this into support doesn't really create that much change relative to all of this price action. This price action was a breakdown from this structure. This structure is the gateway to all of this. The buyers will have to flip this into support in order to have any chance at cracking into any of this overhead supply. And there is a lot of overhead supply here. You can see how every single time recently, when we bumped up against this structure, that's the thick line labeled gateway here. Problems, flips the POC into resistance, problems, and you can see how the value area low tries the whole price, right? And so the idea right now then is, okay, we've had this breakdown under this little structure here, no follow through on it. If you are a buyer, at the bare minimum, you probably want to see this fall first, right? Let the buyers get over this, look for a backtest play, trying to come here and trying to come here next. But if you're a very patient buyer, then you just want to wait for this to fall before you hit any kind of buy. If you are a seller, then you're looking for it to top fish against here. For a day trade, I wouldn't do it. I would not day trade Bitcoin like this, in my opinion. It's just such a choppy mess that it would be pretty challenging to get a good RR, high probability and good RR. Like, you can always have one or the other, but the best trades are when you have both high probability and good RR. And the reason why we don't think it's high probability right now, I mean, you can always find good RR, that's no problem, right? You just be picky with your location. But high probability is a matter of context, right? Is it trending clearly? And by trending clearly, for me, I just mean, are we balancing and then breakout and then balancing and then breakout and then balancing and then breakout, right? This is a very clean trend. Even if you see a little lower high and lower low, if this prior area balance doesn't get cracked, then the trend is okay. It's just pretty much what you see like throughout all this, really, right? You have sideways, breakout, failure, breakdown, sideways, breakdown, sideways, breakdown, right? And so even this move up, even though it moves higher, where do you have problems? Right here at the last area of supply. So that's the idea, right? As long as this area of supply is still in place, then any of this buying doesn't create any change. See what I'm saying? All right, so that's pretty much it for Bitcoins. Gold. So for gold, it's the same idea, right? Let me clear this out so you can see it. For gold, it's the same idea, right? So you know that this little bit of sideways here, and then you've broken down from it. And so if you are a seller, top fishing off of this structure makes a lot of sense, because as long as this seller is resistance, then these sellers are, as long as the structure is resistance, then these sellers are going to remain in control. As long as these sellers remain in control, then they should be trying to move lower. So if they move beyond new lows, they should be trying to come here, 1920.4. Up at all of this price action so far has been dictated by this structure, resisting price, right? Value area low, high value area low rejection, value area low rejection, point of control rejection, and then this guy over here, holding price, right? And so it's a very key test at the point of control here. If you hold this point of control and pop back over 1940.1 and clear this local resistance at 1954.6, then we're probably looking at more balance, and plays targeting this area are back on the table. Okay, as of right now though, the trend is bearish, lower highs and lower lows. This is notable, right? To get this breakdown, no follow through is definitely notable, such that if you see a clearing of this structure, it's aggressive. But if you clear this guy, essentially you could see that as a failure to come down to the value area low and a hold of that point of control. So if you pop back over this guy, right, over this range here, and then get some follow through, it's reasonable to be looking for a back test of this guy here, and then trying to target this, and then trying to target this. Okay, and then if you clear this, then they should be trying to move up here. So it's aggressive because the daily trend's still bearish. And you have this overhead supply as resistance, but it's reasonable to be looking for that play as a bit of a day trade. Probably set up in the afternoon if it does set up at all. Okay, so oil is very similar but opposite, right? So oil, now this guy becomes the key, right? You have this little bit of sideways range here. You've broken out from it. It actually happened again. This is exactly the concept I'm talking about, right? So unfortunately, we weren't around for it, but here you have sideways, you have balance, breakout, balance. So as long as you are moving sideways and higher, then this trend is totally fine. So you have this new sideways structure here, and you use your handy dandy volume profile tool, you'll mark it up, and you'll notice that this back test is pretty much right off this point of control, right? The idea is it's very logical, right? There's no way around it. This is just how markets have to work. The financial market is like every single market. Every single market is the same. It's trying to distribute goods effectively. Okay, so how can it distribute goods effectively? It has to find the fairest price to do business. If it finds a fair price to do business and then we break out, that must mean that there was more demand, right, than supply. If you find a fair price to do business and then you break down, that must mean there was more supply than demand. So as long as this prior area of demand can hold price, then this trend is totally fine, right? So you see how they crack down, they test this high volume area, they can't see follow through, and so if you see higher highs from here, then these buyers should be trying to come up here to this value area high at 94.63. This is the key overhead structure here. You can see how the value area low of the structure was problematic throughout all of this, throughout over here as well. And now that we're making our way over this point of control, should be trying to come here next. There's a good amount of space for a daily higher low to be set. Anything over 86.15 will be good for one. And that's pretty much it. Nat gas. So nat gas is really doing a whole lot of nothing here. Just hanging out, going sideways, not doing much of anything. You got breaks with no follow through, breaks with no follow through, break with no follow through, break with no follow through. So this is just balance. So the idea then now is if you roll back down under this value area high at 2.720, then eyes on 2.634. That should be the goal. If either side starts having problems getting back down to the point of control, right, then that'll let you know the demand from here is starting to outweigh the supply, and we should be looking to the buy side. If the opposite is true and we fall under the point of control and this starts happening, then again, that's the opposite. The sellers are starting to win out here. Okay. There's not much to say about nat gas, honestly. Anything over 2.541 is going to be good for a higher low, and that's it. 4-hour time frame is your short-term guy. It's potential bull flag, so reasonable to be looking for longs here. But let's see, where would you keep your risk tight? It would just be bottom fishing this structure, right? You just be bottom fishing this structure. You don't want to come down too far beyond this high. And then you're looking to come back up here. I used the wrong box here. Something like this makes a lot of sense. If you're trading nat gas, just try to get back here for the first one. Try to get up there if you see follow through on this potential bull flag. Okay. The dollar is flirting with consolidation. You can see how this is the key structure. It was problematic over here. This point of control rejecting price, the value area low rejecting price over here. Now the value area high has rejected price, and we're back under the point of control at 104.635. So if we see lower lows from here, eyes on 104.155. That's going to be super key, and that is all from me. Again, I do apologize for the lack of. We'll try to do TLT really quickly. I see your question here. So TLT is just near the lows of this daily sideways range here. These buyers will create no change without getting back over 94.90. And that's it. Key support is 93.46. If we see a breakdown here, then eyes on key support 92.23. It's really just in a bigger term balance, though, this TLT. All right, so that is it. Again, I do apologize for the missing 6 minutes. But Dan is coming on now for our regular chapter, so I got to jump out of here. I hope you enjoyed, and Laura will be back very soon, I believe next week. And just to check back in on these sectors real quick, Remember, these tests are going to be key. Point of control opening right at it. And for the Fangman T names, it's going to be, especially these Microsoft NVDA, and Microsoft NVDA Amazon, it's going to be all about their value area lows and their points of controls. Okay, so that is it for me. Hope you have a good session. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see y'all soon. Farewell.